Oh, look at that. How showbiz are we? That's awesome. Hello, it's me, Runs, otherwise known as Runs of Fire. I am your host for today's Run Hot or Die podcast. With me, I have two of the most eminent members of the Wolf Spider Battalion, JC and Warlock. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Thanks, mate.
How's it going? How's things?
Pretty good.
Yeah, not bad, thank you.
Fabulous. Right, well, let's start off with the usual question to the guests then. Tell us a little bit about Wolf Spider Battalion. Who are you guys?
Okay, so Wolf Spiders has actually just celebrated its first birthday. We've been around for 1 year now in Mechwarrior Online. Our birthday was on the 1st of November. But the history behind the Wolf Spiders is pretty old school. We've been around for a really long time. The core of the unit has known each other for about 13 to 12 years. And we've been around since just before MBT4. So we've been around a long time. We're very much a competitive unit. Obviously, you know, we have a laugh and play the game, but our focus is to sort of play really competitively. Yeah. Do you want to add anything to that, Warlock?
Just that I'm one of the newer members. I've been a member now for about 4 or 5 months, I'd say, isn't it, John?
Yes.
And basically, we're getting a lot of new members coming in. Some are new players, new to the franchise and new to the game, but we're also getting quite a few in who are members of older teams who've just come back to the game.
Oh, fabulous. So recruitment going well, things are going well. That's good to hear. Now, with your recruitment and whatever, what's kind of the principles, the ethos behind your team? You know, what is it that's attracting these new players to you guys?
I think first of all with recruitment, you know, we're quite tight with our recruitment. Our recruitment process is pretty hardcore. Well, we like to think so anyway. Like we really want a particular type of player coming into the unit. So, but it's also really important that, you know, when people are signing up to join us, you know, that we get a good idea for them and their personality. And it's really important for them to get an idea about who we are, what our kind of, like what you said, our sort of ethos is. Because we always feel like, you know, people can improve and get better at playing the game. Like, obviously we want a certain level of competency and, you know, and we would look to sort of MBT players and stuff. They would be the kind of people we'd love to have. And we've managed to sort of grab a lot of them. We're really pleased with that. But certainly, you know, the important thing as well is that people can improve in the game, but you can't, if someone's a douchebag, you can't make them not a douchebag. So we try and make sure that they're douchebags, basically.
You're born a douche, you'll die a douche. That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much. So no douchebags.
It took me anyway, though.
Yeah, I know. There's always one that slips through the net.
Can't catch them all.
And he's here tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am the unit perv.
So you mentioned, obviously, you've got a lot of MBT or former MBT players. Just for anyone new to MWO and that competitive scene, explain a little bit about MBT for us.
Right, yeah. So a lot of new people coming into Mechwarrior Online probably was like hear this MBT or UTS or these little sort of anagrams thrown around quite a lot. MBT stands for Net Battletech, and UTS actually was another planetary league, which stood for Universal Tracking System. Yeah, really boring, right? But at the time, back in sort of 2000, like these were probably the most prominent planetary assault leagues that set up based around the Mechwarrior 4 Vengeance when it got released. Now, NBT's actually been around longer than that. I think it's it's been around slightly longer or just slightly less than MechTech. So between NBT and MechTech, they're one of the oldest online kind of like organizations based around Mechwarrior that are still in existence. So yeah, I mean, MBT is a pretty special place. I never played Mechwarrior 2, so I was never there for MBT 2, but MBT never did Mechwarrior 3, they just skipped straight to Mechwarrior 4. But when I first started playing, like, I never had really played Mechwarrior. Like, I didn't even know what Battletech was when I first got into it. I just played Quake and stuff, and, you know, was a little teenage moron. And then I discovered Mechwarrior, which happened to be through somebody in a multi-game clan telling me about it. And we ended up kind of getting involved. And back then, like, I just had never touched Mechwarrior, and I didn't know anything about it. And I just started playing as just this hapless newbie, as pretty much what a lot of new people coming into the game now who have never really experienced, Mechwarrior or Battletech.
Yeah.
And, having all the same problems with, like, piloting my mech and looking in the torso twist and the legs and everything. But, I mean, getting into MBT, I mean, it was just a really exciting experience. Like, I'll never forget my first battle in MBT, and it was just the most amazing thing ever, and I was just hooked from that day. I think we actually ended up taking on the Free Rashalag Republic at the beginning of MBT4, and our first battle in the league was against Clan Wolf, who I think at the time was being run by Chaos Ward, who's back again. He's the husband of Di Kerensky, and she was Clan Wolf, but she was actually the admin for MBT4. And I think, like, Juggernaut and a couple of these old players were in Clan Wolf back then, and, like, they just absolutely whitewashed us. Like, it was not even funny. But I remember just being in the battle and just shaking from adrenaline, thinking, "Oh my god, this is so fucking cool!" And I mean, we just got, like, obliterated. But it was just, I was totally hooked from that point onwards, and then I can safely say I became a total addict to Mechwarrior. And like I was like 17 back at this age, and yeah, and then we just played from there, and then MBT kept going, and all the way through different cycles, through the different releases of Mechwarrior 4, from Black Knight and then into Mercenaries. So in total, I played about 5 years solid of Net Battletech non-stop. I didn't even own another game on the computer. I was just like, I'm just playing Mechwarrior, and that's it.
So you've got some very serious pedigree there, obviously, your team, and obviously yourself, JC. I mean, do you find that a lot of those older players, the guys that have played for a long time, have got a good experience of Battletech, are filling the senior positions, or are you very much open to all? You know, you're just looking for the guys that can do the job?
Yeah, so I mean, when you look back in the history of kind of what we call Wolf Spiders today, the other kind of like a really big core component of what Wolf Spiders is made up of all the old Clan Wolf UTS pilots. Well, about half of them anyway. So as opposed to MBT, the other league at the time, big league, was UTS, and it didn't last as long as MBT. It kind of fell into sort of disrepair, and there was no money, and it ended up dying. But back in sort of early days, certainly in the sort of first and maybe second cycle of UTS, Clan Wolf UTS, which was run by Ryan, who's the XO of Wolf Spiders, they were extremely well-known unit back in the day. A lot of the old school good players from the PA leagues anyway would probably put Clan Wolf UTS up there in at least the sort of top 10, maybe top 5 best units of that time anyway. They were very highly respected. But when UTS closed, the unit kind of split, and a bunch of the UTS pilots ended up going over into MBT, including Orion and stuff. And some of the old guard kind of either left or joined other units, specifically like Hansen's Rough Riders, which would be another sort of famous unit, another really, really good unit. But one of the other members back in the day then was Darkgift, and he was actually one of the programmers on Mechwarrior 4. Microsoft brought him in as a consultant because their own program was stuck or something. But we still have all these ties with these people, and we're really lucky. And we that kind of family type sort of situation is very much at the sort of center of the unit. And we kind of try and extend that out to everybody who kind of joins. And like when people join, we kind of like to sort of think that they would be here in another 13 years, which is what a lot of us have said and since we played together. But yeah, definitely there is that kind of core component, and a lot of the officers are kind of situated around those core people. But certainly we're not, like, we have a lot of officers who are also, you know, there's some officers that I never played with. In fact, about 75% of the officers we have I never played with back in MBT. I mean, they did play in MBT. Some of them didn't very much, but we've kind of been really lucky. You know, we've got some really talented people that came to join us, like Warlock from IHX, and we've got some other guys from like WOB in later MBT Hardcore, and then some other people who didn't really play in MBT, and some younger people. But really, it's just about what, you know, passion and experience and dedication about just making this unit kind of work towards the future that we've kind of have in mind for it. And certainly then the other really important thing is that, you know, that we really wanted to bring back as many of these old players that we used to play with as possible. And we were just like so happy to see loads and loads of old Clan Wolf UTS players coming back into the game and managing to sort of pick them up. Guys that, you know, maybe we had spoken to in just insane amounts of years, like just totally lost touch with these people. But, you know, we're really lucky to have them back. And, I mean, funny enough, like, I wasn't actually ever in Clan Wolf UTS. I did actually apply to join, and they told me to get lost.
Oh, how the tables have turned.
Ryan told me I couldn't join because at the time I couldn't use my microphone late at night because my dad used to go nuts at me talking, like, really late at night. Because everything was playing by, like, American time, so I had to start really...
Oh. So, I mean, I've met Orion, you know, and it's fantastic to see so many of these old team players, these old league players coming back. You know, a lot of them have their pedigree with Mechwarrior 4, drinking red wine, you bastard. Oh. You know, a lot of them have this pedigree with Mechwarrior 4, and it's fantastic to see so many of them coming back, you know. Certainly ourselves as Steel Jaguars, we've scrimmed against you guys a couple of times, and I have to say Orion is just a fantastic mech pilot. Insanely jealous of his abilities. It's fantastic.
He's a beast.
He is an absolute beast. Now, Warlock...
Should have got a picture of him on here, actually. There's a famous picture of him mounting a bronze gorilla in a park. Like legend. Now,
if that's not a glowing endorsement for being a senior officer, no idea what is. So Warlock, how have you found, you know, filling this sort of position? How have you found joining WSB as sort of a newer member that doesn't have the same sort of pedigree as such?
See, the thing for me is, although I came into the Wolf Spiders as a new member, a lot of the guys I already knew from my time in MBT anyway, so I may not have known a lot of them particularly closely, but luckily for me, there was a couple of people who were either in the same clan as I was, which was IHX at the time, or the other one I was WX, Wolf in Exile, and also in Clan Staradder. So I've got a couple of guys from Clan Staradder who are still sort of kind of humming and hawing about playing Mechwarrior Online, but I keep trying to persuade them. But I found it relatively easy because, like I said, most of the guys already knew, and it just kind of felt like a second skin. It was like I'd come home again because I'd missed playing Mechwarrior so badly. When NBT Hardcore came out. I played for a brief while in it, but I was still living out in the States at that point and had to sort of kind of curtail my activity a bit. So for like a lot of people, like the last 10 years, I've been waiting for a new Mechwarrior game. And when I found out about this one in 2008 or 2009, I was over the moon. I thought, yes, we're going to get it. And then when it got canned, temporarily, luckily as it happens, I was heartbroken. But it's come down to the fact that the guys who played the game love the game. And they're a decent bunch of guys for the most part. Yes, you get a few dicks, but hey, that's why we have an interview process, to weed them out before they join. But it's actually really easy.
The unfortunate nature of any internet game is you're always going to get a couple of people, a couple of dicks on there. You know, it can't be helped. And like you say, you know, a robust interview process, particularly for those serious teams, is really going to help deal with those sorts of problems.
Yeah, the thing is I like to think that even the people who can be a little awkward once they've got into the unit, and once they see how we roll and how seriously we take competitive drops, but realise that when we're playing in the social side of things, that you can have a laugh and you can have fun. It doesn't have to be game faces 100% of the time. And a couple of them have actually eased up, and me being one of them, because I am a super competitive dickhead when I'm playing. I admit it. I hate losing. And if we lose, I'm normally the first one to complain. And I put my hands up and say, if I'm at fault, it's my fault. But I've got absolutely no problem telling other people what they should and shouldn't be doing. Rightly or wrongly, that's kind of one of the reasons why John picked me to do the job I'm doing.
I mean, that's no bad thing. I mean, I want to talk a little bit more about the competitive scene in a bit, but, you know, just touching on this quickly, I think it's very important for a lot of the competitive teams to have a very robust officer core. You know, you've got to be able to pick out the mistakes you've made in the drop, and also what you've done right in a drop as well. I think that's just as important and sometimes gets forgotten.
That's one thing that's one thing that's very, very important to us, is that if we have a competitive drop that goes badly, is not just to point fingers and blame people, it's also the point to point out what went right, what we did well, look for the positives in it, because it's all well and good blaming people for a failed drop, but you have to give them a reason to play. There has to be a reason why they want to win. And hammering on somebody and giving them a hard time about a mistake that anybody could make isn't the right way to go, because all it does is dishearten people. And I would much rather say, you know what, you messed up this time, but this is what you did really, really well. This is what we as a unit did really, really well. And let's focus on this. Let's turn it into a positive. And let's just not make the same mistakes that we made last time.
Yeah, I think that's a really important aspect of team leadership, you know, and it is something, not just in MWO, certainly in a lot of other games that I've played, there is a tendency for a lot of teams, a lot of guilds to try and lay blame on people, you know, where they've gone wrong. And then unsurprised, you know, they're suddenly surprised when people don't want to be part of their guild anymore or part of their team anymore, you know, because they've just spent 5 hours being shouted at because you didn't kill an internet dragon properly, you know. It's you know, so it's great to see that sort of attitude amongst your team. I think that's really important. It's fantastic, you know, and I hope it's something that a lot of other teams out there bear in mind when they're thinking about their training. I mean, now obviously you've got you formed after this strong pedigree. You've had a strong showing in MBT and UTS back during Mechwarrior 4, and you were waiting for MWO. Now, did you guys, I know obviously you guys did play Mechwarrior 4 because I played against you, why not Mechwarrior Living Legends?
For me, it just never appealed. Like, for me, the pinnacle is just mech on mech combat, and that's what I really enjoyed. And, I mean, I'm not saying that Living Legends was a bad game, because I think a lot of people had a lot of fun with it. And I remember when I was back in MBT, talking about, we had some of the devs coming over, and they were talking about MWL, and Living Legends, they were sort of umming and ahhing about trying to get a league going in MBT around Living Legends. But in essence, Living Legends is it's more like sort of Battlefield 1942 meets Mechwarrior. And I know that some parts of the game seem really fun, and I've watched some of the competitive matches for Living Legends. I mean, and it looks fun, but for me, it just never really was. It just didn't attract me. Not just a case of like how the game sort of played out, but also, I think the devs did a really fantastic job with the resources they had, but obviously they weren't going to be able to sort of fulfill everything that they wanted to do. So those kind of little bugs and sort of niggling little things, I think, sort of hung around in the community and to its detriment. I think in some of those things, maybe the community should have sort of overlooked them a bit more, but ultimately, I never felt like it was going to sort of get massive. For me, it just wasn't the same. I didn't want to play with tanks, or it was just a totally different game from what Mechwarrior really is.
Yeah.
Because changing the dynamic, once you bring in all these other assets, you're changing the whole dynamic of how the game's going to play. So it's not, from my point of view, it's less of a Mechwarrior game, and it's more like sort of Battletech meets 1942. And then some
you can jump
implementation.
into those different vehicles, you go to those different points. Yeah, I definitely get where you're seeing, where you're going with that. That's actually quite a good comparison. But I think there were a lot of things that MWO actually got right. It was never very big per se, and I was actually very pleased. I was worried because MWLL didn't have a great deal of following, and I was like, oh my god, is this, here's this game here and no one's really following it. Is MWO going to have this problem when it starts, going live? Obviously, thankfully, that never happened. But I think there were a lot of things that Living Legends did right, such as weapons balance. I generally think that their weapons balance was quite good. They had a lot of issues with that solved. And I think it's some of those things that perhaps PGI could take a lesson from, especially with some of the teething problems they've had with their weapon balance lately.
Well, basically for me, I just want to say that Mechwarrior Living Legends, I didn't ever actually play. I never even downloaded it. I did see a few demos of it, but to me, the thing that I wanted was a big, stompy, giant robots planetary assault league. And Living Legends just wasn't going to do it. To me, it's like, it's all well and good being a multiplayer mech game, but where is the end goal? I mean, I spent hours and hours and hours and hours trying to develop my skills to a decent level. But the reason for that is because there was a goal to it. I got to take a planet. I got to make the choices that helped my unit achieve something. And the fact that I was a clanner and wanted to take Terra, I helped my team plan for that. And the skills I developed made that end goal for me almost as important as actually shooting giant robots was.
Yeah.
So
I think it's really important to note as well that, like, Mechwarrior 4 wasn't a very good game. To be honest, if I just picked up a copy of Mechwarrior 4 and I played it single player, I would have put it down in, like, as soon as I finished the single player. The replay value of it was pretty much a 0. And if you just went on the zone or whatever and played sort of random matches, it was pretty boring. But what made it for me was just having that structure within the league is what made it. Having that little ecosystem. I think the negative thing around Mechwarrior 4 was that the community was so fragmented between different leagues. There was no way to sort of bring everybody together, which is obviously the advantage of Mechwarrior Online. But Living Legends didn't have that. There wasn't that kind of structure. There were sort of ladder leagues and stuff, but it never, from my understanding, it never really got picked up and made it big time with the sort of planetary leagues. I could be wrong because I didn't get into the Mechwarrior Living Legend sort of scene, but I do know, NBT never picked it up, and So I don't know. I just don't think it kind of. I just don't think it sort of made it far enough. I didn't think it got enough support from the community to really go all the way.
Yeah, never managed to really take it to the next level, you know, beyond clan run servers and things like that, you know. Yeah. I can certainly see your point there, you know, that sort of criticism. So, okay guys, obviously you've told us a lot about your pedigree, where you've come from. Where do you want to go to? What's your goals and objectives with Wolf Spider Battalion?
Well, certainly since sort of day one, you know, we've had an objective of what we want to achieve. Obviously, you know, the most important thing is that we want to be a competitive unit. We want to be a competitive unit across not just the metagame, but hopefully going into a sort of tournament scene. Or, I mean, I'm a really strong proponent of eSport Mechwarrior. I've always wanted to see it. It never really got there. I mean, I think for me, the biggest sort of shot it had at maybe reaching the big time back during Mechwarrior 4 was Mechwarrior 4 actually was selected as a possible for the Cyber Games. I can't remember what year it is, but it must have been like 2001 or 2002. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I remember signing up to sort of be on the UK team. In the end, it didn't get picked. Another game got picked over it. But I mean, for me, I've always wanted to see that sort of really high-level eSport scene. And I think Mechwarrior Online has maybe the best shot at achieving that. Hopefully, you know, the devs can kind of take it in that direction. But, you know, that's where I would like Wolf Spider to be going, you know, sort of finding itself in the eSport scene or the high-level sort of tournament scene. And then as well, having a really strong presence in the metagame. And that's one reason why we want to sort of make the unit a little bit bigger than, say, how big we were in MBT. You know, back then we were a very small unit. We had about maybe 20, just over 20 people. It was a really small core of people. And then obviously the advantage of that is that, you know, you have a really cohesive unit, and, you know, that has a lot of strength to it. But we wanted to have, take advantage of the more persistent nature of Mechwarrior Online.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the other thing as well is, like, back when I was playing in MBT, you know, I mean, I was living in the UK, and, I mean, Battletech has always been a really sort of, has been mostly based out of the US. And certainly, you know, MBT was pretty much every single drop was, like, North American time zones. So for me, you know, I was staying up until like 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning just to play league matches. You know, it's okay when I'm 17, but, you know, I'm 30 this month. So,
we're getting old. We're getting old. You don't need to mention it. You don't need to mention it. We're getting old.
Yeah, so we wanted to have a structure that took the pressure off of us, you know, off of the command staff, off of the drop commanders, and off of the unit in general. So it allowed us to sort of move that pressure around because, you know, we're older, we got more responsibilities now, you know, and we didn't want to be in a situation we had like in the old days where there'd be like, you know, you'd have a CO or an XO or a Khan or a SAR Khan. You might have like 1 or 2 drop commanders, you know, and everything's on them. And if one of those dudes can't step up for real life reasons, then the unit like really suffers for it. And we didn't want to do that. We wanted to make sure that we could support ourselves going forward, you know, making the most of what Mechwarrior Online was going to offer, but make sure that we didn't lose, you know, what we were, that we were always a really competitive unit. We didn't want to lose out. We wanted to get bigger, but we wanted to make sure that we could get bigger but still be competitive.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything to add on that, Warlock?
Yeah, it's kind of one of the primary goals for me is to bring some of the newer guys in the unit into Mechwarrior and show them how much fun it can actually be. Because although I take my gaming very seriously, and like I said earlier, I hate to lose. It pisses me off big time. I want to be in a unit where we can have that game face, where we can have that time where we push, and we push to win. But we can also have the point where we can actually relax and let the guys have time to actually learn. Let the guys learn how the game works. Let them learn to drop command. Let them learn how eventually, hopefully when it happens, the automation works. let them learn about what it actually means to be part of a decent unit, because this is something that hopefully will still be running in 4, 5, 6 years' time. Hopefully it'll be a vastly different thing to where it is now. But I want to feel like I've helped this unit grow and flourish, and we've turned it into something that we can be proud of, and hopefully has been insanely successful as well.
I mean, that's always a good objective for a team, and I think it's something that most teams are very interested in. It's not just, we want to be the best, we want to be whatever. It's about building a good community for players and new players, and hopefully leaving something of a legacy behind for players newer to the game, maybe later years down the line,
Oh, but I definitely want to bathe in the tears of my enemies.
Well, of course, who could want for more?
We all need some QQ in our lives.
Oh, absolutely. Your tears fuel me, as they say.
Feed me your tears.
Nom, 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 nom. Okay, so obviously you mentioned the whole eSport thing with MWO. And, it's one of those things, like you mentioned, MW4 kind of missed the boat with eSports, and I think potentially by being too early, because, let's face it, eSports really hasn't sort of picked up, certainly not in Europe so much, except for the last few years. Obviously StarCraft was a big thing in Korea, but like North America...
I'm being Korea.
North America, Europe, eSports is a fairly newer concept. It's developed over the last, 3-4 years maybe? So with that in mind, do you think MWO has that potential to, now that eSports is starting to become an established thing in gaming, it's bigger, you get people making a living off it now. Do you think MWO has that potential to take it to the big leagues?
I think it does. I think this is the best shot that we've had yet. I mean, certainly, when you look at things like League of Legends and stuff, and what they've kind of gone through as a free-to-play game, it offers a platform. I mean, once it gets developed, that it's just really ripe for that kind of esports. I think the developers have some work to do yet to make it really, really sort of viable. They need to implement better spectating, allow for casters or whatever, or shoutcasters to actually, talk about the matches. I think that's one thing that makes Mechwarrior sort of stand out above certainly other first-person shoot games, but maybe even other sort of mecha games, is that the slower pace. I think that, that slower pace, certainly when I look back to the old teams in MDT, you could really liken them to sort of sports team in sort of just general other gaming leagues, say like baseball, football or soccer or whatever. There's that real dynamic between, you can look at the teams and see the dynamic between the teams playing each other.
Yeah.
But you can also watch the match and you can see individuals. You can see individuals have different personalities. I mean, I know we have guys who play and their personalities can be quite strong. So you can really watch those dynamics, and I think that's what people, obviously for an esport, you need people to be able to watch it and get excited about it who are not playing it. And so I think Mechwarrior has the ability to kind of do that, because you can have people commenting on the matches and they can see what's happening because it's that slower pace. You can see what teams are doing and you can talk about it and people can get interested about it. And then you've also got the sort of off the field kind of antics between the teams. And then you've got, say, there's always grudges. And I mean, this stuff is just always there. I mean, it's in other games as well. But I mean, in Mechwarrior, it's just, you can kind of watch it much better. Certainly in the matches, you can see it playing out better than, than if you're watching like a Quake Live match. It's like blink and it's on.
Yeah. It's...
See, as I say, I agree with most of what John's saying. I think that there are a few things that they need to implement to make it easier to spectate and to give the people who are going to potentially sponsor this reasons to do so. But when you look back, and I'm going to use MBT again as an example here, look back and think about how when MBT Mercs was running, who was the most hated unit? IHX. everybody loves to hate on our IHX. And again, with some of the other units, it's like, remember all the stuff that was going on with Fed, Suns and Eagle. Look at what was happening with the Kellhands. Look at what was happening with so many of the units. There were so many fantastic rivalries. And if Mechwarrior Online can bring something like that to the board as well, add in exciting gameplay and get decent shoutcasting going with it, and I can see it having a real potential to get people interested. Is it going to be a niche market? Well, yeah, of course it is. But then, you know what? Niche markets have a big potential for profit too.
And I think you've really touched on something there that I hadn't thought about personally, which is this idea of grudge matches. Because, believe it or not, grudge matches sell. They sell in sports, you know, the rivalry between teams, that sells, and marketers know that, you know. And, you know, it's an interesting idea, and I think you're right in that you don't really see that in other online games. You know, you don't see, like a rivalry, using the StarCraft 2 example, rivalry between Team Liquid and, you know, one of the other teams. You don't see that play out very much. Whereas you only need to visit the MWO forums and you know there's rivalry. It's not vicious, it's not personal, or certainly not that I've seen, but it's there.
I'll give it time.
Give it time. But it's there, and you can see teams are eager to beat each other. There's rivalries with certain teams. And I think that's potentially a big seller. It's something that's going to involve the crowds. It's going to let them have their favourites.
Well, you've even got rivalries from the other leagues. You know, you've still got rivalries probably there from MBT. You've still got rivalries from UTS. I mean, like, I know Orion, when he was Khan of Cloud of UTS, you know, he had a real, I'm not going to say the name of the unit because they were playing in Mechwarrior Online, but he had a real beef for something they did. They backstabbed them in the Grand Council or something. And I mean, I guess it's, at this point in time, it's a bit of fun. But there's still, you know, people still remember that stuff. But there's still rivalries between the old units in the planetary leagues. And that stuff carries over. You know, there's still units, there's still names that I know, you know, looking over the forums, old names. And you're like, oh, you know. I mean, and obviously, I'm sure, like, in real life, they're amazing people. But, you know, you see their gaming handle and whatever, and you're like, yeah, that guy's a douche. I want to take him down.
I mean, let's face it, I'm not going to name any names either, but there are teams that when the matchmaking was working, if we got them, I used to think, you know what, I want to slap that bitch down. I really, it's like, oh, we've got them now, we have to kick their asses. And this is rivalry going back for 10, 11 years. But I'm not the only one, because I know a lot of the guys in the unit feel exactly the same way. It's like there are certain units that when we drop against that unit, we don't need to say anything to motivate the team because the team's already motivated as soon as they know we've got them. So yeah, I can see that being a big draw if they can package and promote the game in a decent way to make the tournaments a viable option. Yeah.
Now, I mean, you mentioned the spectator thing as well, which I could talk for hours about the importance of a good spectator system for shoutcasts. It's a real personal bugbear of mine. You know, and you can see the success of a fully implemented spectator system in other games like League of Legends. You know, that didn't become a big eSport until they got the spectator mode properly implemented. You know, so I mean, we kind of covered that, and I spoke at length with it when I interviewed ELP. Do you think there are any other challenges that MWO is facing that's going to make it difficult for it to get that? Well, essentially sponsors, really. They need viewers and sponsors to make it a valid esport.
I kind of think that at the moment it's not really in the forefront of the developers. I mean, God knows they've got so much stuff to fix and to shine this diamond up, you know. But, I mean, certainly looking ahead, I mean, the matchmaking is going to be one of the really important things. And I recently wrote, like, a freaking essay about this on the forums. And, you know, and I was really pleased to see that, you know, them implementing and moving towards changes in the matchmaking, because it really needed to happen. But, I mean, certainly what they're describing it in Phase 3, their system of matchmaking, I don't really know how it's going to pan out. I'm kind of sort of biting my tongue and waiting to see. I'm crossing my fingers. I'm hoping that it can work out really well.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that kind of bugs me about in terms of playing competitively would be things like offering training service for clans. You know, definitely that's something we'd want to see, to be able to do drills and stuff. But certainly, I think that I kind of feel that they're going to get there. Like, I don't feel like it's not off the radar. Like, everything that they kind of want to do to get things in place. But it's always about time. You know, they've got a pretty small team. It's like 45 people. You know, it's just going to take them time to shift through this stuff. I don't think that they're thinking right now, like, oh my God, we need to, like, get everything done for esports. And I think a lot of people in the community would really like to see esport kind of happen.
Yeah.
It's just, I just don't see it as being a priority. They've just got so many other things to fix that I don't think they're going to start thinking about that until they've got much more robust system. I mean, like, they need to fix the net code. I mean, just basic things like this have to happen first before they're going to start thinking about the esports scene. And I think, you know, that's going to be about at least a year, maybe. Certainly, I don't think they start thinking about it until next year. But I mean, I just look at the NVIDIA LAN tournament. I mean, that was really fun. I mean, I never thought that was going to kind of happen. I mean, the developers sort of had to sort of hack the whole thing together to get it to work. I mean, watching it, you could see that it was like sort of like, oh, well, it didn't work this time. But, you know, I think it's exciting because it's like, wow, you know, even if we weren't doing LAN tournaments, just seeing that kind of thing happening online. And I mean, the biggest thing is, compared to previous Mechwarrior games, is just bringing the community together. Again, going back to what I said about the community being fragmented. I mean, if you look at Mechwarrior 4, there was NBT, there was UTS, there was Astro Domination League, there was, God, I can't even remember how many blooming planetary leagues, ladder leagues, no heat, no ammo leagues. There was all these types of like micro communities of the community fragmented. Like NBT had a couple of hundred, maybe top in 1,000 people, but they were all over the place. You know, but now we have everybody in one place, and that gives us opportunities that we never had in the past. And certainly for an esports scene, again, it gives us opportunities. And just look at games like EVE. I mean, they have their kind of own little sort of esports scene, and, you know, with the Alliance tournament, but I mean, it's really successful, I think, and they stream it every year in the Alliance tournament, and it's, you know, and it's a real kind of nail-biting thing, you know, teams backstabbing each other, and there's spying, and we're not going to see that kind of thing happen in Mechwarrior Online. But, I mean, there's no way you can't say that this game can offer that kind of drama that other games that are doing esports, you know, I just think that the developers would be extremely short-sighted in not pushing at some stage an esport agenda. I think that they would be losing out on self-promotion and marketing, and they would just be kind of selling the game short.
Warlock, anything to add?
Yeah, I think at the moment, I look at the game and I look at how pretty it is when it runs straight through.
It is very, very pretty. I do like staring at it.
Yeah, and the new snow map is just awesome. They've actually got the view distance correct in that particular map.
Yeah.
And you look at the way the mechs move, and things are gradually coming together. The shadows, they finally managed to animate the shadows, which is a little thing. But it's things that, like that when you're playing as part of an esport, people will notice, especially when you're spectating. And it's getting all that kind of stuff pulled together to make it an enjoyable viewing experience. If they can do that, and then keep the actual gameplay on an even balance, then I think they have something that is going to appeal to people. But it is a case of it's going to take time. I can't see it happening for at least 18 months, to be honest, because especially with the clan thing coming, I think all their resources are going to get spent on getting the mechs they've already planned into game, getting the new maps into game, fixing the matchmaking, because right now matchmaking sucks. And one of my big bugbears is that the Pugs are not having any better experience now with teams limited to 4 than they did when teams were teams of 8. They're still getting curb stomped every bloody game. The only thing that's meant is that the teams of 4 are doing it now rather than teams of 8. I mean, look at the crying on the forums, and that's the kind of stuff that we need to stop happening. Is we need to get a division between those who just want to play it as a 5-minute game where they get in, blow a couple of things up, and then go away and play something else, and between those who actually want to put time in and get good at the game and be part of a competitive team. All the time, the two groups are kind of pushed into the same area. You're going to have problems with that, and I think that will show, especially when you come trying to turn it into an eSport as well. You need to separate those two communities, because I don't think they will ever work together.
I mean, you've hit upon quite an interesting sort of tangent there, actually, and I think I'm going to go down this line, actually. You talked about the... I've got to think about how I'm going to word this in my head now. Bear with me. I'm on the fly. I'm flying by the seat of my pants here, guys, off the cuff. You talked about, obviously, the Pugs getting curb stomped and everything like that, and when they're facing the professional teams. Now, there's a lot of other games out there where if a Pug player comes up against a professional team, and again, off the top of my head, League of Legends is the top one in my mind. You know, if you go in as a drop-in player, basically, against a team, you are going to get fucked quite royally and without lube. You know, there is no two ways about that. There is absolutely no two ways about that. Ultimately, MWO is a team game, and it says that right on the front page of the website. I'm certain it says that on the front page, in fact. So, do you think really the responsibility is with PGI in making the matchmaking work so that Puggies don't get stomped?
There was a... Sorry, I just want to say this quickly, and then you can carry on. There was a really, really simple way for PGI to fix this without breaking the 8-man groups down into 4. All you needed to do is you put a little box that a player ticks, and if he ticks the box, he drops against teams. If he doesn't tick the box, all he does is drop against other individual puggers. And that would have temporarily, and I admit it is a temporary fix, but it would have temporarily fixed the game. You would have had Pugs versus Pugs, and you would have had team versus team. And the Pugs who dropped into the team games would have been the type of Pug who was looking to become a team player eventually. So they would have been wanting to experience that aspect of the game. So when they get their asses kicked or their asses handed to them, they expect that because they know it's going to happen, because they've ticked that box and almost like they were expecting it. So it gives them a chance to view it from a team game aspect. And it's one of my massive, massive bugbears is you're trying to promote a free-to-play game. Why on earth would you alienate half your populace by putting them into a game where they are just going to get fucked over and over again? Because that's what it is. It doesn't matter how many tools you give them, Pugs refuse to use them. PGI put a voice server in specifically for Pugs to use, and it almost never gets used. PGI put the commands into the user interface in-game so that Pugs could give each other commands and try and use some form of tactics. It's almost never used. So you know what? That tells me that if you want to play as a lone wolf in the game, you need to just lube up and get fucked and accept it. End of story.
I mean, and that's where I was going with the question there. Do you really think it's PGI's responsibility to provide that segregation of the community? Or do you think it's down to the players to go, right, you know, this is the score, this is a team game, I need to either find myself a team to play with, find some friends to play with so that we could go on as a group. Now, I admit it's harder finding 8 people for a team, you know, just amongst friends than it is, say, a team of 5 for League of Legends. You know, but do you think it's down on them that they need to accept that, hey, this is a team game, this is what we're playing? You know, do you think that segregation is really going to be good?
I think Mechwarrior has always been really a sort of team game. Certainly that's where I think if you're playing as a team, that's where you're going to get the most rewarding experience than if you're just playing on your own. Because when you're playing on your own, it's not totally obvious what you're doing wrong. And certainly if you're going up against even two people that are working together, you're just going to get killed and you won't understand why you got killed. So, I mean, it's in that sense, there's similarities to how Eve is difficult. You know, that you're thrown in this world and you don't know what the hell you're doing, and then you just emo rage quit. And, you know, it's really important that you find other players to communicate to you, you know, how you need to play this game. Like, what are the ins and outs, what you need to do, and to understand the world around you. And if you don't find that, then you're probably just going to quit or just spend your time mining in high sec. Because
I was going to say, at least in Eve you can spend 6 hours mining without any trouble.
Yeah, but I mean, so CCP's traditional problem has been finding a way to explain and engage new players to get them into understanding how to find enjoyment in Eve, how to understand the game. And that's where they're still, you know, 10 years later, they're still working on that. They still haven't found the right recipe for that. And it's something, again, that I think Mechwarrior has a similar problem. And it's going to be more relevant now, having this, you know, what we have today with Mechwarrior Online, that you're opening up to a much bigger market. It's communicating to people how they need to get into the game. So obviously we need to see stuff coming in where there just isn't the kind of infrastructure right now. And I mean, I'm assuming that this is going to be on PGI's to-do list. I mean, they've talked about having, you know, training grounds and stuff. I think it's really obvious that there needs to be a better way to engage casual players who are just going to come on, because it's a free-to-play game, right? You know, people are going to log on, it costs them nothing. They're going to get in the game and go, nah, I died. I don't understand why, so I'm going to fucking emo rage quit. But you need to try and find a way, PGI needs to find a way to take these people and go, you know, this is how you need to do it. I think that there should be some kind of either sort of easy sort of tutorial thing which explains to you, you know, how the battle grid works. Because you've got some people using the battle grid and people might not even necessarily understand what it is, or they might just ignore it outright. Or you've got the C3, sure, there's basic integration, but I mean, in fairness, it's by default it's turned off, which is fine. But there's nothing to say, you know, there's
hey, we've got this system.
If you logged into the game, you might not even know it's there.
Yeah, yeah.
PGA has to do a lot of work to the new player experience, and I think it's going to be really critical in, you know, making the game, bringing in casual players. I mean, one thing that you could do looking down the road is, and I know some other games do this, is where you can, like in Team Fortress 2, where you can have somebody come and tutor you personally. I mean, that would be something that could be worth exploring. Yeah. But I think certainly the important thing, again, is that Mechwarrior is best consumed as a team game. And so the best thing you can do is to get involved in a team, because they're the ones that are going to be able to tell you what you need to do, how you need to play, to pass on their experience without you having to spend months and months and months on this learning curve and getting frustrated.
I'm just going to add something to that, because basically one of the things that I used to do regularly was go into the PGI open beta servers and play in there. And A, I did it for two reasons. A, because I enjoyed it, and B, because it was a good recruitment tool. I could get the Wolf Spider name out there, I could look for decent players and pinch them before somebody else did. But the other reason I could do it was because what I could do is I could explain to new players what was going on, how they could control their mech, what the buttons were, what the controls were, why we did certain things, why when somebody said Goal 3, that was either a target location, or it was, if it was just golf, that was the target itself. And I spent an awful lot of time actually trying to teach people the basics of the game. And I enjoy doing it, I really do. But one of the big issues I had is a lot of people weren't interested. They would be like, fuck you, I don't want anything to do with you, I don't know who you are, why are you telling me this? And it was almost like I was trying to get some advantage over them. And I'm like, dude, I'm on your team. It is my advantage for you to win. So I'm trying to help you win. I'm trying to give you the tools to win. I'm trying to explain to you why we do things the way we do them, the logic of the game. But there are so many people out there who are just not interested in that. All they want is to turn the game on, blow some shit up, and then once they've blown some stuff up, leave. And my attitude to that is that kind of player is probably going to be quite important to PGI's revenue stream. But what they need to do is to actually separate those out from the hardcore players and hardcore potential players. And the easiest way to do it is just stream them. And if you stream them, like I said, you have a button that you tick or don't tick. And if you don't tick it, you play against other pugs. Once you've got the matchmaking fixed, what you can do is even have a stream within a stream, so that the pugs who have reached a certain skill level will only play other pugs with that certain skill level. And that's fine, because you've then taken that whole stream of players out of the big group. That leaves the big group there made up of teams. Because one of my big fears when they talk about matchmaking is they're on about streaming the matchmaking. I don't want to be sat in there as a team of 8 waiting 45 minutes for another equivalent team with the equivalent skill rating as my team to come in and play. That's bollocks. That's just not the way the game should be. I don't want to roll stomp, curb stomp other teams either, but what I want is a reasonable mix. So that, you know what, if we're not the best team in the world, so be it. There'll be other teams that we're going to get curb stomped by too. But you have that mix. You go in and you play good, bad, and the ugly. And it makes no difference because you're all in the same mix. The pugs, the people who are actually doing the majority of the complaining, are actually in a separate group that way. So, and I think that's something that PGI needs to start work on yesterday. Not tomorrow, not 6 months down the line, but it should be something they do now as a matter of urgency, is separating those two groups, because they will never live side by side in a happy manner.
I mean, to that, I mean, I would say as well that what we have at the moment with the matchmaking is basically just a farce. You know, it's a placeholder. It's like placeholder code. It's like, I mean, again, go back and look at the NVIDIA times. Like, we didn't have a way to make 8 people fight 8 people, so we just hacked it in there in a weekend to get it to work. You know, it's pretty obvious to me that, you know, a lot of the stuff in the game is just, you know, really at an early stage, and it's just there, like block basic code, just so it works.
Yeah.
But, you know, going through these changes with the matchmaking, you know, they're obviously looking at that, you know, ripping that out and putting in something. I mean, I know Warlock's talking about, you know, just adding a sort of clicky box and we can have, and everything will be right as rain. But, I mean, it sounds so simple, but, I mean, my opinion is that PGI doesn't have the option to do that. You know, at the moment they're just like patching back like this sort of placeholder code for matchmaking. That's obviously just not, that's broken. It doesn't give the community what they want, because it's negative for casual players and it's negative for competitive teams. So it's a lose-lose situation. PGI needs to take it out. They need, and this is why I support them, you know, taking the time. I've seen some competitive teams get all whingy because, we can't do 8v8s anymore. Okay, you know, we can't do 8v8s for another 2 to 3 weeks. But in fairness, I'm quite happy just to take 2 or 3 weeks out from playing competitive matches to make sure this game has better matchmaking for the future. Because that's giving us long term. You know, we need to have an option where casual players can play solo. I mean, I've been trying to play solo, and it's pretty frustrating situation. You know, if you play solo and you come up against an 8-man team, you know, you're pretty much screwed. I don't care what PGI says or what any of their community rep says. You know, if you're going up against a decent team,
a well-organised, on TeamSpeak, you know, they practice regularly, which a lot of teams do. You know, let's not kid ourselves. We have a lot of competitive teams. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You've got no choice but just to bend over and take it. You know.
Yeah, so we need to move towards a system that's much better. And I think when we look at what they've said about the metagame and the community warfare stuff, I think that's really an indication of what we might be moving towards. I mean, the big question, and this is the question on my list, is, okay, so there's indication in PGI that we move towards a system where, you know, casual players have a realm to play casually, you know, and then, you know, this is what they're talking about with like lone wolves, and then they talk about the factions, and then they talk about mercenary corporations. You know, that lone wolves and the faction plays being able to have a casual to, you know, more than casual type play where you've got, say, you know, maybe a 4-man group of friends and you drop in as a lance and there's a couple of other friends playing as a lance. And then you move into the mercenary corporations where you've got, you know, full, you know, competitive teams dropping 12-man groups as singular groups. I think, what the casual community needs is a way to be introduced into the game, to be able to match against people with the same sort of skill values. I mean, again, I want to play solo matches, and it needs to be done in a way that I can enjoy it. Whether it's someone who's new to the game or someone who's an old-time vet playing this or previous Mechwarriors. But I think what we're going to really see with the sort of the ELOS system is more of that matchmaking, of skill level. I just think that PGI really has to kind of consider that I think they're going to put the casual community first because that's where they're going to get the ching-ching.
Yeah.
But they can't put the competitive side of the community to one side because they want robust features to make sure that they can play competitive matches because that's what we're here for. We're here to see who's got the biggest fucking E-ping and see who can beat who. That's what matters. That's why I play this game. I don't play this game so I can run around in commando, spam small lasers and a PPC and standing still and getting headshot popped by someone with Gauss Cat.
No, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to mech play, the size of your kahunas is an integral part of the entire system. It has to be, and that's what makes the competitive game in MWO and in previous mech games before it.
I mean, I think, though, when you look at, the meta game, and this is really what PGO has been talking about, I mean, obviously not in detail yet, and hopefully we'll get more details in December, but they're not really talking about the competitive scene. I think they're avoiding it because I think they don't want to have to deal with anything to do with that yet. But when they talk about the metagame, I need to get more information. I do feel concerned or sort of preemptively disappointed in that I think it's going to fall short of even what we had 10 or 12 years ago with what NBT was doing. I don't think there's going to be that kind of integration. I think maybe that's beyond the scope of what they can do at this point in time. Maybe in the future it could develop more, but I think the metagame is going to be the middle ground. It's where the kind of more compelling gameplay is going to be, as opposed to just logging in and playing some sort of random matches. I think the next step on beyond the metagame will be the top level play, where you see the best teams playing each other. And from that, they'll need to sit down and work on a way to make a really robust system for competitive teams to play. I mean, I'm guessing it would probably be something like a ladder league, which is kind of a shame because traditionally I'm kind of against ladder leagues. I never really liked them, and I really liked what NBT brought to the table, which had a planetary league. But I think that the meta game is going to be this sort of middle ground where you've got competitive teams playing. I mean, I think there's a way that they could turn that into more of a competitive scene, certainly between mercenary corporations. But we'll kind of have to wait and see. But this was something I spoke about in my sort of essay about matchmaking. And I guess that they're going to have this ELOS system, but I'd mentioned something similar where, like having a mercenary view and bonding commission rating, which rates each team. Because again, you need to have teams being able to improve. And the only way you're going to improve is playing better teams than you. Okay, you're going to lose, but if you don't, you're not learning anything. And I think that's really important. And I think maybe some of this is a sort of byproduct of the throwaway computer game generation or the Call of Duty computer game generation, where it's like you want instant gratification. But if you want to get good, you've got to practice. And this is what we say to our players. You've got to put the time in. And it's the same for any team out there.
I mean, we have touched on what is essentially a massive issue here, and we could probably spend hours discussing the various things. I mean, just to address your last point, the fact that you've got the throwaway game generation. Now, do you think that's really fair? I mean, again, I keep going back to League of Legends because it was one of my first experiences of competitive play. And I think in many respects, you look at the size of League of Legends following, and that hasn't got a friendly or welcoming atmosphere. It's not a throwaway thing quite so much. There is no instant gratification in League of Legends, and yet it is still immensely popular. massively popular, and new players are wanting, simply because, I have to say, they see the top people playing, and they say to themselves, we want to be those guys. We want to play to that level. Because the feeling when you win in a game of League of Legends is pretty spectacular, especially if you curb stomp the opponents. It's a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you're always going to have those people feeding in at the bottom, right, and aspiring to be at the top, and that's a compelling thing. That you come in as this, noob, and if you practice and put the time in, you as an individual, or hopefully your team, can go on and be the best. And that's I guess that's the sort of most basic, compelling thing that brings all of us to playing Mechwarrior. That we want to be the best, and we want to show everybody that we are the best.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is that kind of throwaway gaming generation, that Call of Duty generation, where people want instant gratification. Because, I mean, I think at maybe a basic level, that's what free-to-play games are playing on, is that it's free and you can just come and play and give it a go.
Yeah.
And a lot of people feeding in at the bottom are going to just play and have that kind of throwaway experience. But what the hope is that you pull these people into playing, and you get them into the game, and then they start to work themselves into the system. Then they want to, work their way up and be the best, and that's the kind of plays that we want to see,
I mean, you mentioned again, obviously PGI want those casual players. They want them for no other reason than profit, really. I mean, let's face it, PGI's a developer house. They need profit, they need whatever else. But I want to throw in quite an interesting statistic I actually got from Red Studios, the guys who are developing Firefall at the minute. Again, another free-to-play game. A free-to-play game, incidentally, that is integrating the idea of spectators and eSport right from the start. I mean, they've fully integrated it into their arenas. There's multiple camera points. They've given tools for shoutcasters, and the game is still in beta. I think it's in closed beta at the minute. It might be open now. I can't remember. And one of the statistics that Red Studio made was, in a free-to-play game, you can make a good level of profit with only 7% of the player base paying money towards it. And again, I believe he was citing, the director was citing League of Legends, the things like the new skins, unlocking new champions and things like that. And obviously that's a very similar model to what MWO has. They're slated to have the paint jobs, new camo things. So do you really think that pool of newer players, those lower level players, is going to be as important? Or do you think that, with this idea that it's going to be the hardcore that are actually going to be paying more, more likely they're going to take more pride in their mechs? Do you think it might be better, at least for the short term, for PGI to cater towards those players? The ones that are going to be playing it rain or shine?
Well, I think first of all, you can't deny that the game, that there is an appetite for the game. I mean, look how much money they made on the Legendary. I mean, that is
massive.
A record as far as I'm concerned for, any kind of sort of Kickstarter-esque type thing. Over $5 million. I mean,
huge.
I remember when Russ posted and said how much the game had cost to date. Now, this was a good while ago now, so I'm sure it's exceeded that.
Yeah.
But back then, it was only it cost them $7 million. So, that's a massive profit for a game that was, I mean, essentially in closed beta. And I know some people would argue it should really be called closed alpha. But, it's obvious that the game is successful. I mean, I thought when they were going to go open beta that no one was buying MC, and that was a big, compelling reason for them to push the open beta.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to see live statistics on MC purchases. And I was really surprised to see that how much MC they had sold. Made over $1 million in just MC.
I was not aware of that, actually,
yeah,
really.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, you're talking people that were buying Legendary packs and had MC Like, and it was getting, you know, it was given back to you when they did resets in the closed beta. And they made $1 million just on selling MC. You know, I was really, really surprised. So I think there's no way in hell this game isn't going to make money. I think PGA is well aware of that. I think maybe this has even surprised them that they didn't expect to make this kind of money.
Yeah.
But again, I think that they're pushing... I think it could be perceived that they're pushing for the casual gamer because they're working on stuff that is such at the very sort of foundation of what this game needs to be. You know, the very, very basic things. I mean, it's really important for them, even though that these players probably aren't going to contribute huge amounts of money, certainly in the short term, to the game. Obviously, it's the people willing to buy legendary packs and drop $120. I mean, you're talking hardcore Mechwarrior and Battletech fans that are doing that. That's where the money's coming. But I think that for their strategy for the future, there has to put in place a robust system which caters to the sort of at the very basic level, because it's really important for them to have new people feeding into the game. Because what happens if suddenly you've got a bunch of crybaby tabletop players queuing because heat sinks up. And
don't sit on the fence about your feelings regarding them. You know, I wouldn't want you to get splinters there.
Yeah, so, you know, I think it's important that they want to have new people coming into the game, but some of these things obviously are related to just bare bones what the game needs to work, and there's still a lot of these basic kind of foundation type things of the game that they need to fix, and they need to more traditionally, well, certainly now anyway, to the sort of more casual gamers.
So I think that my feeling on that is that they've gone slightly the wrong way about it. I think that eventually, that probably is going to be a case of that your casual players are going to put a bigger amount of money into it in the short term. However, I think for right now, the game appeals to those hardcore players who've got belief the game is going to eventually get to where they want it to be. So, and they're the people who, for right now, are putting money into the game. I mean, I've got a Legendary Founders Pack, and I got it because I want to support the game. But you know what? I bought Mega Credits, I think, twice or possibly 3 times since I bought that, just because if I'd been playing WoW, I'd have had a monthly subscription going for that.
Yeah.
So the money that I would have put into that, I put into Mechwarrior Online because I want to see it succeed. Not because I necessarily have spent the Mega Credits, but basically, I think it helps to create a revenue stream for the developers. So if they actually base the game on those hardcore players who are going to be more accepting of flaws in the game, those people who are going to be more accepting when things go wrong, what you've got is you had the opportunity to keep this in closed beta for longer, because those people would have stuck with the game. Right now, what's happened is they've pushed it into open beta, and they've realised that they need to have a client out there that's going to make money for them. And they've then suddenly realised that they haven't got a product that's very balanced at the moment. And I think this is where the potential problem lies, because all the good publicity, all the good will that was generated by the game when it first came out is now gradually being eroded away by the people who are coming in, playing it, seeing all the issues with it. And because they're casual players, not hardcore players, they're kind of drifting away.
Yeah.
And it's that... Sorry,
you're right. You see it on the forum posts. You know, you see people come in and say, "Yeah, tried it for a bit. It's not for me." I think I even saw one post where someone had essentially tried to play the game like an FPS shooter, like Team Fortress 2 or something. Yeah, it's very sluggish. The controls aren't very responsive. What's with the turning? I can't turn properly using mouse. And it's like, you clearly don't know how to actually pilot a mech, you know, and there's these sorts of issues that are potentially driving, like you say, those new players away.
Yeah, and I think what they need to do is just take a step back, think about where do you want to go? Where do you want this product to sit? And you know what, if you put your hands up and say, you know what, actually, we've made a bit of a mistake. What we need to do is slow down a little bit, reevaluate where we sit, and even, you know what, it wouldn't be unheard of for them to say, you know what, we've decided that we moved to open beta too soon. Let's draw back, let's close the beta down again. The people who've still got access to the game, fine, they can still have it. And let's get the game into a situation or a position where we're happy for people to come into it and see what it is. They get to try a polished game, because you're still going to have the revenue coming in from your hardcore players. Yeah. And I think that's what they need to seriously consider, doing something like that. Because my big fear is that 6 months or 8 months time down the line, when the game's actually in a decent state, the people who would have come in, would have paid to play that game, are going to think, you know what, I tried it 6 months ago, it was shit, and I don't want to play it again. That's my real fear.
Yeah, I think obviously there is a very important question about, did we enter open beta too soon? And I think we're probably all very much agreed that we probably did. But I think some of that was forced by PGI's very optimistic timeline when they initially announced the game. I think, again, looking back, PGI was, as a fairly young and inexperienced development studio, was very, very naive about what sort of time frame they could produce this game.
But sorry to interrupt you on this one.
Yeah.
PGI made a very valid, very brave step when they cancelled the original open beta date, when they said their product wasn't ready.
No, that was a great move. That was fantastic. Yeah. I'm really glad to see them taking that sort of responsibility.
But my feeling is at that point, they should have said, you know what, I'm not going to give it 4 weeks. Let's give it till January. Let's see where we are in January. And let's put things into place gradually so that when we push it out into open beta, we have that ability to keep new players. Because right now, the big problem is that for every 10 players that join, maybe 1 or 2 are staying for more than a week or 2. And that is a huge drain. Yeah. And you can't keep that up and have a successful product.
I think, like, first of all, when you look at the forums and you see all the fucking sea of QQ and moronic bullshit, like, I mean, and I've got quite a few posts on the forums, and, you know, the thought of going through the forums just gives me nightmares. It's a horrible, horrible place. But I mean, the same could be said for EVE Online forums. It's just full of trolls, and it's just full of bullshit. And I just want to sort of punch yourself or cut your wrists or something. You could say that about almost any game, to be honest with you. You know, again, look at World of Warcraft. Probably 90% of the subscribers of World of Warcraft don't use the forums, and simply for that reason. You know. Yeah, exactly. But that in itself doesn't, you know, people look at the forums and say, oh, the people are leaving. But, you know, I don't think that really gives a good, you know, sort of signal as actually what the feeling is. I mean, look, at this stage, I probably sound like a right, you know, licky brown nose towards PGI because I've kind of been sticking up for them, I guess. But, I mean, I'm not going to sort of pull any punches on the fact that there are some serious big problems with the game. You know, it's obvious that there's so many things like the netcode, for God's sake. You know, for a game that is Mechwarrior Online, you know, its netcode is balls. It seemed to start off, the netcode seemed to start off very well and seems to have gradually got worse as we've gone through more and more patches.
Yeah. See, I genuinely think that PGI have done such a great job with parts of the game, where you look at how the game's actually running now, and you think, you know what, it actually looks damn good.
Oh, it does. It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
But then you get the stupid bugs like in MechLab, where you actually configure mech, save it, and then the MechLab locks up. That is a ridiculous bug because it forces you to restart the client. When you launch a game, you black screen. Again, another ridiculous bug. It's this kind of bug that shouldn't have been allowed to be in the open beta. I mean, I've got no problem. You know what? Games crash. You have released clients that crash regularly. Yeah. I don't have an issue with that. But the pure UI that you first see when you get into the game should be something that they take pride in, should be something that works the way it's intended to. But right now, you look at the UI, I love the game, I love playing the game, but let's be real about it. The interface is a mess. When you go into the mech lab to try and create a new mech, you can't add Ferrofibrous to a mech to see what it does. You can't add double heat sinks to see what it does. You can't add so many different things to the mech to see what effect they're going to have, because if you do, it charges you for all of them, even when you undo it. And I know this is a thing.
It's changing.
I know.
It's commented and said it's changing. That's that stuff is going to get fixed.
But my point is that stuff shouldn't have been allowed to be in the open beta. Full stop.
And I think Warlock's got a point there in that respect. I think very much PGI's focus has been on the game, the actual gameplay, being in your mech, running around, shooting, all that sort of stuff, and which is why it looks good. They purchased the rights to use the CryEngine free. It looks fantastic. They are getting things up to speed. I mean, I would probably say they put most of their effort into making that gameplay work. And I think, to an extent, it shows. I think Warlock is also very right that they have neglected, and they've neglected right from the start, the opening interface. The welcoming screen, that. And there are so many good examples to use. Again, I'm going to use League of Legends because it's a free-to-play game. It runs on a very similar sort of open browser when you first join in. And by comparison, MWO lacks. It has no decent social channels. It's clunky to make a group. And why are social channels important on a Mechwarrior game? Because as we came back to, it's those social channels where new players can join in a text without, I know we've got the beta TeamSpeak and everything, but you'll find having social channels helps a lot more, where you can text, you can go in, type to, join the newbie lobby and type in, say, hey, I'm you, anyone want to go for a game with me? And little things like that, making it easy to modify your mech, making it easy to make a group. I think I have to agree with Warlock there. I think these are things that should have been there before we went open beta, and I think it's something PGI needs to take a little bit more care and a little bit more polish on, the same as they do with gameplay.
I think PGI has, in some regards, tried to maybe sort of bite off a bit too much in their sort of production cycles. I mean, look, I'm not a games programmer or an engineer, or I don't work in the game industry. So, it's always easy for us to sort of look in and say, oh, wow, they should have fucking done X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think, obviously, when they say this themselves, that the free-to-play kind of thing is a whole different ball game. Now, obviously, we're used to, certainly over the last couple of years, massive big budget games. I mean, you got like EA dropping hundreds of millions on a game that takes, X amount of time, that has 200 developers working on it for 4 years. And then we get a gold product and everything's happy and shiny, and then whatever bugs there are get fixed. Yeah. I mean, like when we're playing Mechwarrior Online, it's like living in a house while the builders are building it around you. I think, even if you look at the language coming from like Russ and Brian, it's shifted to picking up on what, say, some of the blogs and stuff are saying. And I think that's very much, there is that feeling within the community as well, is that there's that Mechwarrior Online is like this sort of rough diamond. It needs to be polished, but the core gameplay is exciting. I think that when you look at the core gameplay, there is some stuff there that is just way better than what it was in Mechwarrior 4. But there's so many problems, and it's like, where do you start? Yeah. And everybody wants to see something different, prioritized. And
see, I agree with what you're saying, John.
But that's anywhere near finished, even until like next year, the end of next year.
I agree with what you're saying to a big degree, but one of the issues that I see time and time again when talking to either Brian or any of the other devs is where if you ask them a question about some things, they're more than happy to try and give you an answer. But when you ask them questions on matters of substance, the answer seems to be by default, I'll get back to you. I'll post it in the forums, or I don't know the answer, I need to talk to this guy, or I need to talk to that guy. And to be honest, that's not the answer I want to hear. You know what? I would much rather be honest and say, you know what? I really don't know. We haven't decided yet. It's something we're working on. or even come out and say, you know what, dude, you don't need to know that, and I'm not to that question, rather than give me 2 flannels worth. Because you know what?
They're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't in that regard. You know, you prefer them to be honest. You're going to get someone else who's just as equally going to say, well, you know, he told me that's none of my business and whatever else. You know, however way they play that public relation thing, you're going to get people that are going to appreciate their honesty and their candour, and you're going to get other people who are just going to be, these guys are dicks, you know?
Let me just put another point to you then. And this is another one of the signs where I think that as much as I think PGI do a good job in some areas where I think they need to really sit down and think about what they're doing. Patch notes. When we patch on a Tuesday night, there is no reason why the patch notes couldn't be posted on the forums a good couple of hours before.
I agree with you there. I agree.
Give people a chance to look over them, and it kind of builds up the anticipation if it needs to be built up anymore. For the patch.
But you used to get,
sorry,
I was going to say, you used to get the emails that came out before the patch,
yep.
You know, and telling you don't seem to see them anymore, I must admit.
And the thing is, it's kind of like, it's almost like they're frightened to admit that they haven't got around to doing something. So rather than admit they haven't got around to doing something in advance, because people are going to cry on the forums, what they do is they just don't tell you and hope you don't notice. And it causes more problems because people do notice. If you're honest and upfront and say, you know what, we're on a 2-week cycle when we do things. We haven't managed to get this working how we intended it to work. So what we've decided is we're not going to put it in the patch. You know what, most people are fairly adult about it. And if you tell them that's why they haven't done something, they will accept it. But when you kind of just throw the patch out there and don't admit that there's been a problem, people get angry about that, and that's why you see a lot of QQing out there. Because there is that lack of transparency. Because people want to know. It's in the nature of the people who kind of hang out in forums. I admit it, I'm a forum troll. So I look for this stuff. But you know what? If you make a post and you criticise Piranha for the way they do something, that's fine. Because at least what you're trying to do is hopefully do it in a constructive manner where you suggest a way to improve whatever the issue happens to be. By the same token, if you're going to do that, you should also point out when they do things the right way, when they do something in a really good manner. It's like when we had this big issue with the LRMs recently, where they came out and what they did is they increased the spread, turned down the damage, and really basically turned them down, which was something that didn't need to happen. But rather than do it in a constructive way where you turn one item down each time, so let's say you increase the spread. If you increase the spread, you may not need to decrease the damage.
Yeah.
But if you increase the damage and increase the spread, suddenly the LRMs have gone back from being overpowered to underpowered, and they're crap again. And right now, that's one of the big issues, is they try to make too many changes too quickly. What they need to do is slow down, take a breath, and actually implement a change at a time. Double heat sinks is another example. They put a fix in to fix the double heat sinks, and then screwed it up again because they left the double heat sinks in the engine still working as double heat sinks. Where what they should have done is just said, well, you know what we'll do is we'll fix the ones outside the engine and see what happens then.
Yeah.
If we need to increase them, we'll decrease them. But don't try and do too much at once, because if you get something working, it's far easier to move to the next thing than 5 things and have 5 things you have to go back to fix.
Yeah, I mean, so by your point of view then, really, PGI should take a slightly more robust attitude, and much like a company like Valve would, where they turn around and say, hey, it'll be done when it's done, rather than trying to pander to the audience, so to speak, and try and fix too much at once.
Yep, exactly. I mean, if I've got to wait 18 months for this game to hit where I'd like it to be, I'm going to wait 18 months. But you know what? It would just make it so much of an easier ride if they would do things in baby steps during that 18 months. Because the more things you break, the more you have to repair. And that's been the issue so far, is every time they've tried to implement too many changes, they end up breaking things seriously. And both times they've had to do hot patches is because they've changed too many things, plain and simple.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you talked about the patch there and the Artemis, you know, and obviously I do think it was right they rolled back the Artemis, and I think even to the extent that they did it was probably, as an immediate fix, probably the right thing to do, just as a stopgap to an extent, just because the way the Artemis system was working, it was making games unplayable. And I have to say, literally, as EU division manager for our team, half my EU players were like, you know what, I'm not even going to play this until it gets fixed. So I think that the rapid hotfix was definitely needed. But, I mean, let's talk about some of the other things in the patch. I mean, the Artemis and the overpowered nerf. We've had cockpit damage come in. I haven't really seen any of the cockpit damage come in. Is that actually working? Is that in place?
It is in place, but my comment with that is what happens with the cockpit damage, or what I've found, is that you lose all your HUD and you lose all your display, but if you power it down and start up again, it all comes back magically.
Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. You know, and again, we've got those sorts of things where, like you say, they're rushing a lot. I was anticipating that they were going to have some of the paint jobs and camo schemes in this last patch. That doesn't seem to have happened either, and I'm fairly certain it was on the patch notes, unless I was just in a feverish, alcohol-ridden dream that made me wish that there was camo there somewhere. I mean, can they maintain this? You know, it's a weekly thing. People wanted weekly patches. They want to keep putting that in. Do you think that perhaps they should go back from weekly patches? Do you think the weekly patches should be down to just one thing per week? You know, where can they go with this to make it work?
I think that, first of all, PGI needs to look at their quality assurance, because, in my opinion, their quality assurance is probably one of their weakest links, and why we're seeing people get so frustrated when patches come out and you've got, you know, 1 step forward, 2 step back, where you've got these ridiculous, stupid bugs that shouldn't be getting through. You know, I mean, it's going to happen, right? It happens in all games. But I think PGI, I mean, and obviously this isn't really, well, I'm assuming it's not directly PGI's responsibility. I'm assuming this falls on IGP as a publisher. And let's not forget that they're a startup. Yeah. That they need to improve their quality assurance, making sure that this stuff doesn't get through. And then the other kind of thing to this is the test server that PGI is running. We know they're running one. Brian's confirmed this. And in fact, we know some people who have been privately invited to the private beta test server. I think really in the future, now whether this is what they're planning to do or not, they need to go in the route of something a bit more like what Team Fortress 2 does, where everybody can play on the beta server. Because if everyone was playing on the beta server, then these bugs and stuff wouldn't come through, and hopefully they would get fixed. And maybe that's what we'll move towards in the future. But, you know, I don't know. The current beta server is invite only. I don't know what the criteria is. I don't know what kind of players they're looking to get involved. I mean, with the Artemis thing, it was worrying because nobody spotted it. You know, nobody spotted the negatives. And, I mean, I'm assuming it went through QA, and then I'm assuming it went through the beta test server. I mean, like, I don't understand how people play games and go, hold on, this is working as intended. I mean, I'm not, you know, lambasting them, but it's obviously when it went out onto the live server, you know, it was noticeable pretty quickly that there was something wrong. So we need to see, you know, IGP and PGI tighten up on the process of how patches get rolled out. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you can stick 1 week patches, you know, up your arse. It doesn't make any difference to me. I think what's more important is having, you know, something that is, you know, obviously not full of bugs. That's not, you know, taking the game backwards in the wrong direction. Because that's just bringing negative stuff onto the game, and people talk about the negative stuff. People aren't going to talk about the good stuff. They're going to round the game for the fuck and it's poo. So I think they really need to tighten up on that, and I'm hoping that that they're learning from these mistakes.
Okay, the thing I'll add to that is the patches you asked about, whether they should deviate away from the one patch a week thing. I don't think they should. I think the one patch a week is a good thing, but do it in small steps. If you're going to add the mech in and add the map in, and add one module. For instance, if you're going to add ECM and BAP in, add one in or the other. Don't try and add both, because it gives you two things to go wrong, two things that you have to go back and fix. So if you take it in small steps, you know what? People are going to look more forward to the patch, because they're going to have something interesting in each patch. You're going to have less things to fix, so your team actually gets to focus on what they need to be focused on. And there are just so many issues with quality control right now, and the way things go through in-house testing, that my personal opinion, and I'm really strongly in favour of this, and I hope PGI listen, is that what they need to do is increase the size of the closed beta testers team again. Get people back in, so you've got a group of hardcore players who actually do sign some kind of agreement not to talk about what they're doing, and let them test the stuff properly, because it's become apparent that IGP external QA testers can't do the job. They do such a rotten job that they need to hand it to people who actually understand the game, who understand what they're looking for, and actually try and break the game. Because you know what, as a competitive player, I'm looking for every advantage I can possibly get. And if that means that I find out I can get 9 ER large lasers on the Jenna and it's not going to break it, you know what, I'm going to damn well do it.
Absolutely, as you should. As you should.
But the trouble is when you're using external quality testers who've got no battle technology, who've got no knowledge about Mechwarrior in general, trying things like that wouldn't even occur to them. So that's why things make it through the internal testing. So I genuinely believe that doing that and having an external in-house testing team would be of a huge benefit to PGI.
Guys, unfortunately we're starting to run out of time here. We've already probably gone a little bit over. We've touched so much on eSports and the competitive nature of the game. It's been fantastic. It really has. I just want to dial it back a little bit. And I was even going to talk about potentially having Solaris Arena, community warfare, and perhaps Solaris Arena ladder matches with ELO as an alternative. I think that's something we're going to have to touch another time, because there's just so much we've tried to cover here. I do want
you just need to have us back again, Runs.
Oh, I'm sure I will. I am certainly sure that I will have you back again. I think one of the things I would like to very quickly touch on is Run Hot or Die tournament. Obviously, you guys were a part of that. How did that go for you?
I think it was. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're playing in the league, and we were in the tournament as well. We got knocked out by Jade Wolf, again another MVT group. They were really, really good to play against. I think it was fantastic to go up against them, and we went away and had a lot to sort of discuss and debrief and learn from that. But we don't see it as like a negative thing. It's all good. And then we've been playing the league, and it's been really fun so far. I think we haven't lost a match. So I mean, right now, as far as I'm concerned, Run Hot or Die is pretty much the only thing happening in the community that is competitive. So obviously, we want to be part of it. We want to encourage other teams to get involved, because the stronger, really it's kind of like sending a message to PGO saying, hey, the community for competitive gameplay within MWO is really strong. So, listen to what we're saying, and done in a really constructive way, as opposed to crying on the forums. I think that we need to sort of see Run Hot or Die develop. We need to see more teams get involved, we just need to see it as, as a sort of nucleus for the competitive side of the game. And again, that's sending a message to PGI saying, hey, look, take a look at this. We want to play this game in this way, and we think it can have a really positive effect. And hopefully the stories and everything that can come out of Run Hot or Die can not only help market Mechwarrior Online and bring more people into the game, and we can help players come up and improve and help sort of be a sort of spokesperson for the competitive community, to make sure that PGI is listening to the kind of agendas that we want them to sort of identify and tackle.
I'd say that I've loved it so far. I mean, we're quite lucky being a reasonably decent-sized unit. We've got a unit involved in the North American side of Run Hot or Die and in the European. And as it happens, both teams are undefeated, which is always a bonus. But it's kind of like, it's given us something to play for. I mean, because with the way the drops are on the server, there's not too much competition out there. Actually getting into a competitive game and being in a situation where you can feel the tension and where you actually feel like the need to win. You can feel that competitive spirit just grabbing you and making you want to push that little bit harder. I mean, we've got a couple of players. So I'm going to give a shout out to Jay and to Iceback, who both everybody else needs to team kill. I mean, seriously, these guys are two of our best players, and you need to just smoke them. But they are kind of like the core of what Wolf Spiders is really about. I mean, it's that win attitude. It's that not give up. Doesn't matter if we're 6-2 down. These guys will actually fight and actually work their way to give us the win, even when it's not expected. So Run Hot or Die has actually given us something to play for. And for that, I've got to send out a big shout out to your guys for organising it and inviting us in.
Well, I mean, that really was the intent. I have to say, Gloria and Methos have put in just an enormous amount of work trying to get this done. And it's one of the reasons why we started up the podcast and everything else as well, was to try and build that competitive community. What about some of the other community-driven tournaments? I think probably the most prominent one being the Trial by Fire. Is that something that's grabbed you guys? I mean, it seems like an interesting concept. It's not something that grabbed me personally, but it's great to see community support for that tournament. And again, it's another player-run competitive scene.
Isn't that the stock one?
Yeah, it's
Trial
the stock
mechs.
build. Yeah, Trial by Fire, you have to use Trial mechs.
Boring. No, I've never been a big lover of stock mech things, but I mean, fair play to them. Again, it's highlighting another kind of aspect to the community and how people want to play. It's not something personally I would want to get involved in, because stock mechs can kiss my ass. But yeah, I mean, I would encourage everybody plays the game, how they want to play it, and there's a lot of teams that played in stock leagues, and there should be something for them as well. So kudos to those guys for organising it.
I've signed up for it, to be honest. I mean,
What?
I may not be I may not be the biggest fan of trial mechs, but you know what? Anything that's going to give me some competition, I love. And you know what? If somebody hands me my arse, I'm not going to be overly thrilled. But after I've gritted my teeth and rubbed my sore behind, I'll wish them the best. But you know what? I intend winning that fucking thing.
Are you serious? You signed up for it?
Yeah, I've signed up for it. Several of us have.
Oh, the Arnie soundboard.
Yeah,
I mean, get to the chopper. Now, obviously, I think a tournament like that actually has a lot of potential for newer players. Again, it's a lot of the newer players, the only option they've got is to play with those trial mechs. But it gives them that early taste, perhaps, of playing in a competitive style setting. And as I understand, it's not. Is it team based or is it individual based? I'm not quite sure how they're.
it's team based.
It is team based. So they're obviously using trial mechs. It's something that makes it very friendly to new players, which perhaps something like the more I don't want this to sound patronising, but the more advanced tournaments, you know, where your team can take a drop deck and whatever kind of build you want, isn't quite as friendly. You know, that's for some very hardcore competitive teams in that kind of scenario. I mean, what do you think about that?
I'm just going to say, on this, kind of linked into this, I just wish that one of the things that I had done is, rather than go the trial mech route, is actually had given every single new player a free light mech, so that they didn't have to go the trial mech route. I agree, for the tournament, it's probably a good idea because that's what people have. Yeah. But by doing the trial mech thing, rather than giving them their own mech that they own right from the start, they've alienated a big bunch of the players right from the word go.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm going to have to starting to wrap this up. This has gone on. It's been fantastic, I have to admit, but you guys are really bad for me getting to bed on time here. I'm sure my boss is going to be thrilled. He's going to be absolutely thrilled when I roll in bleary-eyed. Why are you tired? Because I was interviewing people about Mechwarrior. What do you think?
I'm sure John will tuck you in.
Easy, Tiger. Guys, just very quickly, if people wanted to watch you, watch live streams, your YouTube, where could they find you?
Just look through my window. And they can watch me. Yeah, at the moment, I'm not streaming or anything because basically my computer's a piece of shit. So I need to get a new computer, but then I might start like streaming or at least recording. I mean, a good few of our players record matches, and we use it, you know, to sort of do debriefs, and also we can use it then to sort of evaluate individual pilots and say, look, you know, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this right. It's a really good way to do that. But we do have like an official sort of Wolf Spider YouTube channel, but there's basically like nothing fucking on it. So I'm hoping when we move sort of into next year, we'll have a bigger presence on that kind of thing. But at the moment, it's pretty light.
The other thing is that we do have one of our members who has now figured out how to stream stuff without crashing his computer. So he's actually on the boat starting to stream stuff quite soon, which I'm not sure John was aware of.
Oh, really?
Hopefully, when we post this up, if you got details of his channel, we can stick that up. Very quickly, what does the future hold for Wolf Spiders? What's your final outgoing message to people who have watched this evening?
Planetary domination.
Yeah, I think, you know, what we're aiming for is domination in the metagame and domination in the tournament eSport arena. You know, that's what we want. We want to work really hard towards that. We've done a lot of work and we've still got so much more to do, but I've got no doubt that we're going to get there. We've got some really talented players. We've got some really dedicated, talented officers and admin dudes, and we got some pretty skilled pilots. So, you know, I think that we've worked really hard and we're just going to keep pushing for it. And we're going to be there. So, yeah, get ready.
Yep, we are going to own the universe by the time we're done.
Fantastic. Guys, thank you very much for joining me this evening, taking some time out on your Sunday. I, of course, have been Runs. With me has been John Clavel and Warlock from Wolf Spiders. Fantastic, guys. Thank you so much for spending time. Now, if you remember, if you joined this, if you watched this, please do follow us on our YouTube channel. It'll give you updates when we're doing podcasts. It should be every 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. That's 7 p.m. UK time, 8 p.m. Central European time. And then we will, of course, post links up to this because we upload it on YouTube. And we also put it up on iTunes as well. And we will put those up in the MWO forums as well so people can find them. Guys, thank you very much once again. It's been fantastic talking to you. I've really, really enjoyed it. And we've covered so much this evening.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for having us, dude. Yeah, thanks, man.
It's been an absolute pleasure. It really has. Guys, take it easy. See you later.
See ya.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
I'm the party pooper.
Yeah, no problem. Just out of curiosity, do PGI actually watch any of this? I just think it might be a good idea to actually email Russ and Brian directly. Yeah, I can arrange that.
Boom!